these days in college basketball. Let's start with Davidson. The Wildcats will begin on the men's side. What to watch for here for them, Coach? What comes to mind first off with Davidson?
The thing that jumps to me is their positional size. They have, across the board, they're going to play guys who are bigger at each position than the opponents that they will play in this league and their non-conference schedule. Second thing that jumps out to me is how do they address ending last year with 6 straight losses? That's got to be in their minds. And then the third thing is for a Davidson team to be concerned about offense over defense. That's interesting.
I say too, finishing a season with 6 straight losses, you think coming into this season, you want leadership. You want players that are going to lead the team the right way and have the right mindset. Coach McCollum talked to us about Reed Bailey, a player that's on the all-conference 3rd team. He feels like can take that next jump in terms of leadership and possibly become a Peyton Aldridge type of player, Coach.
Come on now, come on. Man, you got me chilled now. Peyton Aldridge was Larry Bird in this league. He couldn't jump over a paper and he couldn't jump to the top of the backboard, but he could play.
Yeah, Reed Bailey, a player last year that averaged, double figures, scored in 21 games. He scored double figures, so I feel like you have that leadership in terms of scoring. And then Connor Cochera, which is a player that we'll hear from soon in the presser, also looking to take up his level, take his game up another level, and really score the basketball this season.
Yeah, returning the leading scorer, 13.2 points a game. What about on the women's side? Let's get to them. Let's talk about the Davidson women's basketball team and what you can expect from them in this 24-25 campaign.
Yeah, head coach, Gail Folks has done a terrific job in 8 years of just putting out a very consistent team. They always have a ton of depth. They score inside and out. This is a roster normally that's filled with about 7 or 8 different Australian players. They really look to go to Australia and take advantage of that pipeline. I like what Gail Folks continues to do. I think she does a terrific job in terms of player development, Mike, and really making sure that her players are getting better season in and season out. 7th
year for her, Coach, and we'll talk to her in a little bit as well.
Interesting path.
No doubt. They were preseason number 4 in the upcoming season here in 24-25, the Atlantic 10 poll. And then on the men's side for Davidson, checking in at number 12. But we're going to get to the press conference right now. You'll hear from both coaches. We'll come back and recap what they had to say and continue on here on the 2024 Atlantic 10 Conference Media Day, the press conference now for the Davidson Wildcats.
Here on the podium with the A10 studio crew. This is not part of the press conference. After coach and student athlete, after coach has his opening statement, we'll have questions. During that session, please raise your hand with questions and we'll have a microphone brought to you. Please identify yourself and your outlet when asking a question. Davidson College will begin today's press conference. So on the dais, we have student athlete Connor Cochera and head coach Matt McKillop. And if you could please, Coach, if you could say a brief statement about your team and the upcoming season.
Yes, well, thank you very much. And it's a joy and a pleasure to be here representing Davidson College, representing our basketball program, and being a part of such an incredible league. And I'm seeing some amazing coaches and incredibly talented players and feel very fortunate to be able to be here today. We are very pleased with the progress that our team has made since last April, where we began a mission to prepare ourselves for the upcoming season. And we believe that we have an opportunity to do something special. And we're lucky. We returned 4 starters from a team that maybe didn't have the record that spoke to how good and competitive we believed that we were, but fell short by 1 or 2 possessions on so many occasions. But we've seen incredible growth from those who have returned. Connor Cochera is sitting next to me. He's one of those players, and I could probably go on and on about each of the others, as well as adding many new pieces that we believe can impact our program right away. It's going to be a challenging year because of how strong the Atlantic 10 is, and we have a competitive non-conference schedule, which I believe would be most easy to point to the Battle for Atlantis, which is arguably the best MTE, best preseason tournament in the country, and we'll open up on that event with Arizona, and Providence and Oklahoma are on the same side of the bracket as us. So through 2 weeks of practice, I think many coaches that you'll hear from today are very excited and very optimistic. But the work we have done to date, the improvements we have seen from our players, and just the environment in our gym with our coaching staff and everybody returning and everybody new allows us to be incredibly optimistic for what we have ahead of us this season.
Okay, we're going to open to questions for Connor and Coach McKillop. Patrick.
I might as well stand up at this point. Matt, I know you guys historically have been a team that has relied on offense, and last year it was kind of inverse. You know, how different was that, and how much do you think those two kind of even out, or maybe offense elevates a little bit for you this year?
That's a great question, and yeah, a little bit of an outlier, if you will, in terms of the history of our program. I think a lot of that those offensive struggles dealt with our ability to make threes. I think we were 350th in the nation in three-point percentage. And David Skogman, who had an injury in January, was our leading three-point shooter at the time. His absence forced us to have to adjust our offense to highlight the talents and utilize our talents. But in reality, what it did is it allowed us to have lineups that the most talented thing those lineups had was defensive presence. And Grant Huffman was a great defender, and he's the main role player that we had from a defensive standpoint that's no longer on our roster. But I don't think enough credit is given to Reed Bailey and to Sean Logan. And really those two are the ones that allowed our defense to be as strong as it was, whether they're the way that they can defend ball screens, the way that they can move their feet and stop penetration, the way they can protect the rim, and then the way they can rebound. But then I believe we have incredible toughness from our perimeter. And you know, I don't know if we have any guys on the perimeter on our team this year that will be the all defensive team players, but they're going to be tough enough to be just as good as any team will face defensively. We're not quite where we were last year defensively yet, and Connor and I actually spoke about that last night, but we believe we're moving in that direction. From an offensive standpoint, one, I think we've really grown and improved offensively as individual players. Two, I think we've added some newcomers, some freshmen, some transfers who are very strong on the offensive side of the game. But I also think stylistically we're doing some things that are going to hopefully maybe hide some of the weaknesses we had last year, but also allow us to use our strengths to better than we did last year. And I believe that maybe it won't be an outlier year. Hopefully we can have that same level of defense, but I'm really confident in what we're doing offensively right now.
Coach, how do you see the league race shaping up this season?
How do I see the league race shaping up this season? I haven't really thought about it very much to give you the answer that you probably want. I saw the preseason rankings, and I actually obviously had to put together my beliefs on the preseason rankings. And as I was doing that, I'm thinking there's a lot of teams I just don't know enough about. Attrition, graduates, guys that moved on, and some rosters I don't know, but hey, I know that team, and I know they're going to have some really talented players. I think it's easy to expect Dayton to be just as good, if not better, than they always are. I saw VCU's preseason #1, and I thought about that yesterday when I saw the rankings, and it made sense. I mean, Max Shulga can play anywhere in the country and could probably be playing pro right now if he chose to go that route. And then, a lot of chatter about St. Louis, and how could you not think about them with what Coach Schertz did at Indiana State, some of the players that he brought with him, and then the talent that returned from their roster last year. So, I saw those preseason rankings, and I was like, okay. But I also think that we're not far behind many of those programs in what we've seen from our players this summer and this fall.
Connor, I wanted to ask you a bit about a couple of those guys that Coach just mentioned in the front court that had made a huge difference for you last year. In particular, Reed, but also Sean and his shot blocking, and just what a dynamic they give to you. What's kind of your take on them?
I mean, it's as a guard, playing with them, it's been unbelievable. We're talking about it on the defensive end, having someone like Sean in the middle of the paint to kind of make up for any of my mistakes on the perimeter is very nice. And even the strides that they've taken offensively too, and make it super easy for me as a guard, coming off handoff actions with ball screens, getting them in actions with the game experience that they got last year has been huge, and it opens up the floor for me. It opens up the floor for all of the perimeter players on our team, and it's just a big step that our team has taken this offseason, I think, with those two specifically. And having the ball in their hands, with them making plays offensively and defensively, it just takes some weight off of the shoulders of the guards, and it kind of helps everyone play more free.
Coach Aaron Bracey from Big5Hoops.com in Philly. You mentioned kind of the unknowns in the league with the roster turnovers, maybe, and that's throughout college basketball. You guys are not quite like that. You have some veterans, as you mentioned. You have Connor and Reed, more than 25 points back. How much of an advantage do you think that's going to give you, especially maybe sort of earlier in the season when other teams are trying to sort of figure things out and you already kind of know who you kind of have?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And by the way, saying you're from Philly, I didn't mention in the rankings, I mean, everybody knows how good St. Joe's is and the talent that they've returned. And they could just as easily have been picked number one this year. We talk about that as a team, like that. Hey, we have talents, we have skills. We believe we're very tough and competitive and playing very physical right now. But we have an advantage over many teams in the country because of those who have returned. I mean, returning 4 starters is crazy, but it's not as consistent now as normal years. It allowed for our newcomers to quickly learn how we play, and they're not just listening to a coach tell them what to do, they're then watching their teammates do it. So maybe our style and system is a little bit complex, but it's not as complex when you have a number of players who can execute that perfectly right now as these newcomers are learning it. So I think the learning curve for them is mitigated as a result of it. I think obviously these guys have played together, they know each other. Reed and Sean were roommates as freshmen, and then they were starters together for the second half of our season last year, and they are so much better now playing together on the court at the same time than they were 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 12 months ago. Connor talked about the freedom that he can play with as a result of what they're capable of doing from an offensive standpoint now, but I think all of our guys would agree that the growth of everybody, in addition to the experience that many of our guys have had playing together for several years now, is going to allow us to be successful.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Connor. We'll now welcome up the women's basketball program from Davidson.
All right, Matt McKillop, Connor Cochera leading us off here today for the Davidson Wildcats. We're just underway with the 2024 Atlantic 10 Conference Media Day from Washington, D.C. Mike Corey, Ice Young, Phil Martelli. All right, little recap of what you just heard from those guys for Davidson.
Well, stop the presses. And you could talk about running effective offense, but you cannot run effective offense unless their three-point shooting improves. Sub 300 in the country, that's very much an outlier for Davidson basketball.
Yeah, I agree with Coach. I think there's room for a player or two to step up and to allow themselves to be that main three-point shooting threat and continue to stretch the floor.
Yeah, and Coach, you said you got to have it because if not, you become one-dimensional, right? And then defenses know that, hey, I don't have to worry about anybody on the outside, right?
And to be honest with you, Mike, that one dimension is gone. Like, there's nobody other than Kansas through Hunter Dickinson playing in the low post. You got to spread the floor out. These defenses are so good, and they load up ice to the ball so much. Yep. You have to take the ball over the top of defense.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from the women now. We got